You are listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Protein Machining, and this week I am very happy to welcome back Jamie Underwood. How's it going, Jamie?
Hey, Dylan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. So since we last spoke, you guys have had a ton of growth. You've changed job titles. Give us the update. What has been going on at Hadrian?
Oh gosh, there's been a lot. We're sitting at roughly 160 people now, I think, or so in the building. That sounds about right. I have since moved from my position of head of programming into a new role of director of programming operations, which is a fancy way of saying, strategic roadmap for CAD and CAM at the company. Which is really, really fun. Still trying to grow into that role, trying to understand what that means exactly, as especially in American North American business can be odd. But yeah, definitely finding my way, and have some great emerging leaders taking some of my responsibilities away, and growing their own role and replacing me in as the head of. And that's been actually the fun challenge, is learning how to manage a manager. So new for me.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Because that's probably almost triple where you guys were last time we spoke, I think.
It is, yeah. Our growth rate is pretty exponential. I think by the end of the year that we're looking to get to roughly 200 people. And thereafter, I have a feeling that probably caps what we need in this factory. And then sky's the limit thereafter. I think like the game is reduction of labor, right? So like, what can we do to have, less is more, so to speak. So we have a lot of people doing a lot of the things like here's a good example: automating manual inspection is a challenge. And I don't think that it ever will have a return on investment or anytime soon. I don't see a return on investment anytime soon with any automation platform that I've seen on the market, but there's not very many. And the ones that are good tend to be vision, but that doesn't really help you with stuff like, pitch diameter on an internal thread.
Right. That's what I was just about to bring up, is like, as someone who has worked in inspection, I can see a lot of that. So much of that is feel-based and vision-based that it's very hard to automate. Thread checking is a pain in the ass for anybody. And I would imagine, I have no idea what you guys are working on currently in terms of that. But I know, as someone who has been final inspection and in-process inspection, man, that stuff, it's so feel-based that it's really, really hard to automate.
Yeah, and it's one of the biggest challenges of the company is how do you do in-process inspection with kind of new people to industry? And I honestly can't believe we're able to pull off some of the things we are able to pull off with people that are, a couple weeks into a job that, before that they had never even seen a gauge, let alone a factory. One of the best people in our facility, in my opinion, was a cook, as I mentioned last time. And, we have a few people that worked at the Gap in the past, and, these people are able to pick it up. I don't think there's not enough documentation in the world to teach people to feel. So really it is trial and error at some point. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. In-process inspection is one of those things where, I pull my hair out, I think, and a lot of people at the company do, because it's probably one of the hardest challenges for us to get over. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. One of the things out there, at least the ones I've tried, are not great. Like we had a auto thread checker from, I think it was the company Thread Check, and it was like basically a hand drill style torque sensing motor. But you kind of had to know how to check a thread already to use it, because it would get stuck or it would bind up and give you false negatives and things like that. And so at the end of the day, I think we used it for like 2 weeks, and then we were like, all right, just go back to manually checking thread gauges. It was easier.
Yeah. You're just counting revolutions and doing math. Yeah, that's I hate to say this out loud, but sometimes the old way is the best way. So, you know,
Right. There's
you
a
gotta,
reason we've been using it for 100 years, and like that's why.
gotta respect the history before you, and definitely do. Like some of the stuff that people made on Bridgeports back in the day, I can't believe like planes were actually able to fly. And with some of the over tolerancing I've seen on prints recently, I'm frightened for if I ever had to jump on a Bridgeport again. I don't know if I could even attempt to do some of the things that those guys were doing with like feeler machines and tilted head Bridgeports, drilling angled port passageways. Like it's insane. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like there was a tighter connection between designers and engineers and machinists back in the day. Cause I know I've worked in companies where, you look at the print versus what we're actually making. And, it was a print from the 40s or the 50s. And like there was understandings about what the part actually needed to be.
Yep.
And now there's none of that gray area of like, oh, well, I spoke to the engineer directly and we worked on this together. It's just like, this is what it is. And it's a tough place to
Yeah,
be.
the Skunk Works model, man. Like that's exactly what that is. I mean, it's putting a bunch of skilled with their hands that are with people that are skilled in mathematics and putting them together and seeing what you can build, which is a pretty powerful model. It's very similar to the model at my old team, the Pi team up in Northridge, when I was working for Facebook or Meta, I suppose is what they're called nowadays, and Amazon for a brief period. That model is powerful. Now, I would say that it's powerful for like one-offs. It gets really hard when you start to get in production, right? It's not really meant for that, but like definitely do miss the ability. I miss having the ability to call up an engineer and saying, "Hey, man, what are you doing here? Why are we doing this?" So,
Right. Do you actually need
yeah,
this? Are you sure?
yeah,
This is what this actually means,
yeah,
by the way.
exactly.
Yeah, it's no, like you said, it's great for working fast and loose and getting prototypes out. But I also have friends that are, they are tolerance analysis experts
Mhm.
at large defense contractors. And there are a reason that we have, GD&T, and there's a reason we have Prince. And there's I hear a lot of people declare that GD&T is dead and that it's not useful. And I'm like, all right, but like it's also what keeps our missiles from exploding early and things like
Yeah, 100%.
that.
I don't know how, when people say that, I think usually what I hear is an unwillingness to learn GD&T. I mean, I really do. I mean, I do know, like I've struggled in the past, right? Like you step away from it, it's definitely not riding. It's not like riding a bike. Like there's updates to like, I think it's every 4 years, right? Like the ask me updates will start dictating new things on prints. And then all of a sudden the thing that you used to know, you don't know anymore. You have to go re-educate yourself. But I will say, like, if you know GD&T well, you can put very few callouts on a print and convey an intent really quickly. And that is the key. That is the key. Is for me, a well annotated drawing makes me want to hug an engineer and say thank you very much. You just made my job much easier. So
Yeah, same
yeah.
here.
So kudos to the people out there that are, taking that seriously. But I understand like moving towards like a 3D model based, like PMI based annotation space without like a physical paper, I think would be nice, or having more context of like a subassembly or assembly would be great. That would definitely help people build things quicker, which is probably what most people would like to see. And I actually think it's probably a little mixture of both, like good drawings, 3D space that has good depiction of what's happening, and then some understanding of where the piece part is actually fitting up to. And that would probably do everything that anybody would ever need. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that it kind of speaks to that both sides of the aisle need better training. Engineers need better DFM training and real world understanding of what they're putting on the print, what it means in real life. And then we need better GD&T training and
100%.
people understanding I see people all the time so afraid of like position callouts and things like that. And it's because of just not knowing. It's just ignorance.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people too early in my career. And I totally understand it. It is scary seeing all these, symbols that you have no idea what they mean. And you're like, oh, every time I've seen it, it's just been a pain in the ass
Yep.
part. This is going to
Yep.
suck. And then it's only once you start learning, you're like, oh man, he just made this infinitely easier for me because of the way he designed this.
100%. A bunch of linears on a print will make me cringe now when I see them, versus a 5,000 true position called back to a datum reference. Like I would much rather see that. It gives me a lot more wiggle room. Actually, it's harder to hit linear dimensions, believe it or not. So I know people probably want to fight me on that one, but 100% harder in my world. I'd much rather see just a generic
It is
profile.
as long as the engineer has done their due diligence and done the math.
Bingo.
Like if they take a plus or minus 5 dimension in both directions and then give you a 5,000 true position, that's a misunderstanding of what they're
100%.
doing. And that's where I think it gets bad.
3x, right? Like like a minimum of 3x. So
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, like generic. I love generic profile, just not generic profile tolerances of 10,000s everywhere on a part. Actually, is very difficult, depending on the part geometry, right? So keep it loose. Only control things that you need to control tightly. And then if it doesn't matter, don't dimension it like it matters. So, I mean, that's about as simple as it gets. So,
Yeah, totally. So, you're spinning up a bunch of more people in the company. How has that been training wise? How has that been, automation wise? How is that going?
I mean, there's challenges. I mean, we have a new line that we've spooled up. And that line, is kind of 100% homegrown. So that challenge is real. But really super rewarding when you see like something that from the ground up, the company has built, automation platform all the way to the operator is essentially COTS or, homegrown componentry across the board. Having this idea of being able to share tools between machines and all these really cool ideas that we're actually seeing work, is pretty awesome. Training's been really, really fun actually lately, even though it's challenging because we're starting to see kind of like, a year and a half of effort starting to pay off where some of our guys that joined the company in the early stages, 3 years ago or so, those guys are progressing incredibly well where they're, effectively, operating as leads on the floor. And, we have more and more programmers getting closer to those problems, helping them out day to day, which I think some of the osmosis training is starting to pay off. Like programmer being near issues is really helpful. Yeah. So I think overall we're doing really well. I think we have challenges. Scale is difficult to this company. Although it is infinitely easier than a lot of other manufacturing companies because of our model of bringing in people that are new to industry as a primary. So like we have people out there that want to work here. We don't have to look for skilled labor, which is an advantage. And, the model that we have so far is working really well. And it's kind of proof is in the pudding here and, factory 2 of Hadrian, where things are actually running really well. Our utilization rate is super high and it's all working out.
That's killer. So since you guys have hired so many people, I'm curious, like, I think there's this sentiment that's kind of growing now with all of these AI tools that AI is going to take my job, and I think it's kind of across the board in any trade or any business that creates anything. I think designers are worried, people who write code, machinists, all of that. Do you find in the interview process and onboarding process that you're hearing those from these people? Are they joining Hadrian out of, a little bit of fear of like, oh, well, if I get in with the automation guys, maybe I'll keep my job longer? Do you hear people worried about their jobs? I'm kind of curious about that.
Excuse me. Actually, not at all. If anything, I think that people are really excited to work on like the cutting edge, right? Like to get close to, um, whatever you want to call AI. Like, AI is an overused word for a lot of technology. That's just like Industry 4.0, and you guys know my hatred for that word. So, I won't go there
I
again.
think we all share in your hatred
Yeah,
of that
thank you
word.
guys. I appreciate this community here. No, I really do think it's more understanding that it's always been here. Like AI is now just becoming a household kind of like term because of the chat GPTs of the world and all these, desktop tools that you can use to kind of automate some of your day to day on your computer. I think the sentiment of of AI is scary. I think especially when you start to hear about AI controlling your computer and doing mundane tasks. I think that we're pretty far away from that. I think anybody that would allow full exposure like that probably deserves the problems that come from that. So, the technology is fairly new when it comes to like piecing all these different bits of technology together. So, like, be wary of that. But I think from a business standpoint, like we're all about adopting automation, and a lot of what we do is focusing on machine learning and and how do we utilize, repetitive task analysis to become better as a business, and then, thus learn how to train people better. So I think actually AI does for us is it helps target training to what matters, which is really powerful in so many ways that I don't think people look at AI as a training tool as much as like I would. So
Yeah, totally. Well, in light of that, I had Al Watmo on the podcast recently. He's part of the Patreon, and he asked, how do you believe manufacturing automation transforms the role of machinists? How will automation transform the role of a job shop?
God, that's such a broad question, but I think if I were to have to boil down that question into like the simplest form, I think what it does is it eliminates probably a vast majority of the middle portion of the business, unfortunately. I do think there will be less people in the industry um, per like GDP, like so as a percentage of like overall GDP in the country. I think that probably goes down, but I think the numbers grow. So I actually think that there's going to be more people in the industry, but because of our productivity going through the roof in so many different industries, I think the percentage might appear to like go down. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of room for people to enter programming or a machinist role as kind of a new person in industry. So like, your operators or, some basic programmers. I do think a lot of the vast middle portion of it goes away through automation. So like, toolpath automation, for instance. So some of the days of fighting through 70 different tabs and in a module and perfecting those things will probably go away, and you'll probably have a CAM system that out of the box works really well. Which is not my experience to date. Like most of the time, right? You have to do a lot of user customization, but and then I think that there's always the role for the person that's doing either the super high end production program that needs a lot of emphasis and a lot of different details that where, seconds matter. And then there's going to be a lot of openings for people that can do really quick one-off programming at a high fidelity. Those things will not be taken away by AI. I think all they do is help that person along the way. So
Yeah, totally. Well, and hopefully it kind of fixes I feel like we pay people far too little in this trade
100%.
typically. And so, hopefully that magnification of force means that everybody will be more valuable and, get a better wage and all of
So
that.
yeah, the one worry about hollowing out the middle, right, is it's harder to get to the top rungs, I think this is why I preach understanding code, learning how to code as a machinist, I think is valuable. It allows you to bridge a gap that I think that AI or, technology in general will start to like infiltrate the space of that middle kind of career programmer. So just understanding how the system works, not just utilizing the system, I think is a valuable space for people to be in. And I do think productivity will call for pay increases. I think Hadrian definitely lives our values where we pay people well for their skill sets. And, we're hopeful that, we don't actually, we don't nip around the edges when it comes to paying good people well. What we do is we try to not have to have so many people. And I think that really is the key, right? Is pay the people well that for their experience, they're only going to aid your technology. And, maybe you don't need 30 of them, right? Maybe you only need 15. And I think that that's the win for the business.
So as a company kind of leading that charge of hollowing out the middle, like whether intentionally or not, and hiring people out of places like Home Depot and restaurants, can you speak to how you guys give opportunities to those people to work their way up? I know, when you guys started, you were hiring a lot of programming talent. Are you now trying to bring that up internally as well and give these people their shot?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of our best programmers was a machinist on the floor when I started here, and he now is, exceeding in a lot of ways because one, culturally, he has a really good relationship with the people on the floor, and that helps him get his job done quicker because of his relationships. And then two, that he is very, very eager just to learn, right? So no matter where you throw him, he is what you would call a yes man in every good way. So where he doesn't look at opportunity as a negative, anywhere he's pointed at as an opportunity for him to solve a problem, and then, grow his career. So I think what I realized is those are some of the best people that you can kind of bring up and put into a programming team. We're still hiring and we'll continue to hire good talent, apply online. We always have a role open. And we will be growing our team both externally and internally. We definitely have more opportunity now to bring people from internal into the CAD and the CAM arena, and that's exciting for me. That's really what I would love to see ultimately is where we are growing our own talent long term. So
Awesome. Are there things, I can't remember if we talked about it last time on the podcast, but are there things that these people are doing, learning outside of just machining that are helping? I think we've talked about last time you were starting to learn some Python or working on Python. Are there things like that you think make a candidate very valuable outside of just machining prowess?
100%. I think one of our our best stories of the business is a fellow by the name of Owen, and shout out Owen at Hadrian. He started as a technician. He was excited just to run forklifts. That's what he wanted to do. He got in and it was pretty clear that he had the ability to take on a lot of new information, and then had a smooth brain, so to speak, and was able to really, really progress, where all of a sudden he started learning bugging programmers every night until they would show them how to, what does the syntax mean, or what is this cycle referring to? And then before you know it, delving into C# in order to automate one of the deficiencies of our early system way back in the day, so you didn't have to click a button 1,000 times in a day. And just seeing that, now has parlayed him into an applications engineering role. And this was, again, a guy 3 years ago that took a job at Hadrian because he loved to run forklifts. So that kind of shows, one, Hadrian's will to let people progress quickly, regardless of their age or experience level on paper. I don't think that really matters as much. I think delving into problem solving in a technology field in any way will get you to where you want to be. Coding is definitely one that will bring you towards CAM. Uh, and it will just help you understand why we do what we do, and then, help you then find deficiencies in that system and, make them better. So,
Awesome. So would you say Python is the best place to start then
yeah.
for, people listening if they're trying to, value add? Is that where you would
I
start?
would. I mean, that's what we start most of our programmers learning is basic Python to automate their day to day, right? Like find a thing that you're doing repetitively, make a task. We recently automated communication standards. So like how we actually communicate to people in the company at this scale starts to matter. So then like you have to say the same things your definitions need to be clean and crisp, and your updates need to be in a formatted standard way in order to get the value of them at this scale. So we have automated that, which was an early task actually for Chris Lee, and he did an amazing job at automating that. And now he's going into our new cell, and he's going to be one of the primary people to help debug that and make it better. So 100% Python. I think C# is another one that really, really is heavily utilized in my world. So I think those are the two that I would focus on.
Very cool. Well, we've talked a lot about the potential benefits and the benefits of automation, but from Instagram, Josh Hacko asked, I think the biggest question in all tradespeople have about Hadrian is how you balance autonomy with machine safety, whether that's crash or NCRs. We all know you're achieving an insane level of autonomy for new and novel parts and new fixtures and workflow. What milestones did you pass on this journey? And more importantly, what matters surprisingly a lot and surprisingly a little on that roadmap? So what mistakes or issues has this brought up? How have you handled them? All that good stuff, or bad stuff, I guess.
I think the hardest one is real. Like the hardest one is the littlest one that I think most shops don't think about, which is like burrs on parts. So, and that one was the one that surprises me, and it's still today to today. Like I'm still very surprised of like the amount of NCRs that we would have for like a non-deburred part, because we don't actually teach people how to use a file here. And that's a very new thing for me, because to me, it's like, that's the easy part, right? But I guess I forget, if I rewind 17, 18 years and remember myself trying to use a file and remember gouging parts up, and that at this like level of manufacturing where an edge break, has a 5,000ths tolerance on it, that's it becomes a problem when you have to rely on your operators to do that. So like we try to program those problems away 100%. I think it's almost 100% impossible. So there's always some level of fallout there. And then I think the surprise has been being able to teach somebody that hand skill is really difficult in this environment. And, it's something that we're still challenged with today after 3 years. So
I could totally see that. Yeah, I would imagine at some point too, that's one of those tasks that's incredibly hard to automate. Not only deburring, but the inspection of burrs, because at what point do you stop increasing the magnification? Like we had limits on that at past jobs where it was like inspection could only use a 10x loop on this. Yep. Because, you deburr something and then that chamfer now has created 2 secondary burrs, and then you deburr the secondary burrs, and now you've got 4 secondary burrs, tertiary burrs. Yeah. Like at what point is too much inspection? And some of that's flowed down from customers, but at some point it's just incredibly hard to decide when enough is enough.
I think you nailed it. I think that's part of our problem is like, what is the definition of a burr? Is what basically nobody knows. And there isn't a real definition on the market. So like even a customer doesn't really know what they want. So like most of them, at least, really what they're asking for is they don't want to be cut and they don't want any FOD. So they want no material debris to fall into an engine cavity or or something like that, or get into some type of like brake line. Who knows, right? Like, but the point is like, we have tried to figure that out here to the point where we've tried everything under the sun and then some to like define what a burr is, and we still struggle with that. Is it a Q-tip? And if any of the actual cotton comes off on the edge, that means that you have something. Is it the vibration of that Q-tip along that edge? But then you start picking up things like feed rate and feeds and speeds issues, or scallops from a tool. So then that starts to fall apart. So if anyone has a great idea, I'm welcome to that, because that's a problem that I would love to hear how other people are solving. I think there's the obvious where you go into like, soft material, post-processing, like where you throw a part into a bath of some sort. But we try to avoid that only because of the critical portions of a part become really hard to then control. So, but
Yeah, totally.
yeah, that's basically, I think you're hitting on a thing that a lot of people don't know or don't understand. So,
Yeah, I'm very thankful for my time in inspection for learning about all that, because I worked with a fantastic final inspector who had such a keen eye, but also knew when enough was enough. Well, actually, he was curtailed by rules in the company on when enough is enough, and it made it was very interesting to see that. It was like, oh well, I saw this, and it was like, yeah, but did you use, was it 15 by, was it 20 by? And then it was like, well, then it doesn't count. That's not what our customer cares
yep,
about.
100%. Like,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so the other part of his question was, what milestones did you pass on this journey? Like, where obviously this was something that seems very small but ends up being very large. Were there very large things that you guys thought were going to be these insurmountable tasks and then ended up being a non-issue?
Yeah, I think training probably falls into that, where like it's been an issue, but not really, not like we expected. Like right now we have 14 Hermalays with 5 people running them. So, and this is, a pretty high mix environment. So, we have new setups, every day on equipment, and we're hitting utilization, upwards of, 70 to 90%, depending on the day. So like we're doing quite well with that. So I think that was one of them. I think the other, I think I would have to say utilization. That's the thing that I look at and I say, holy shit, we're doing this. This is working. And I haven't seen this in places that have had skilled labor. Right. So that's where I feel pretty stoked about, the prospects of the company. So,
Wow, that's killer. So speaking of machines, I think the last tour video I saw of you guys did not have the Grobes anymore. Is that something you can speak on?
Yeah. I mean, nothing against Grobe. Love Grobe. I don't think I have a lot to say about that. About having to get rid of those machines was like one a blessing, only because the scope that we had at the time needed to be more focused. So having 2 different things to develop for 2 different platforms was actually a detriment initially to the business, and I didn't think we recognized that, which is one of those things that I was alluding to earlier that you have to learn by doing. I don't think that anyone would have thought that initially, and there would have been no way to actually know that it was actually holding us back from really developing the system on the Hermalays that we fully wanted. So, but the big play there was check with your machine tool provider if they have a GUI on the front end of your machines. And can you actually interface with, let's for instance, the Siemens control, or does everything have to go through, their interface first? And what we realized is we were actually developing for Grow, and we weren't actually developing for the backend platform, which was Siemens, which is really what we need. We need to be able to touch the back end of the system, and we're trying to hit the big 3, right? Siemens, Heidenhain, and Fanuc. So we decided at that time it was time to sell those pieces of equipment. I loved them because they offered us a different ability than the Hermalays did. And now that we're stepping into higher and higher production, I think that conversation at our business will probably peak back up eventually down the road, whether or not that type of machine tool is right for us now. So
Very interesting. I think that that's definitely a tough pill to swallow, but if anybody was going to do it, could definitely see you guys doing it. So
yeah. And I think one of the things too is like we also to just a real quick shout out to the team, at Hadrian. I mean, we hired some of the best people in the industry, and they wanted to come and work on something really challenging, and they have delivered. So the development that we're doing seems long term, but in a lot of ways, it's been 2 years, and about 6 months into the 2 years that, a little over 2 years I've been there, we started taking customer parts in, and we haven't stopped. So we've been developing this thing that is a long-term venture while producing, margin for our business. So that actually is something that some people thought would be impossible, that we should focus on, development only. And then, once we are ready, so to speak, start bringing on customers and then offering a solution that we saw that the industry needed later. And what we came to back then was we don't have time to wait, nor would we ever be able to get to the end goal without having real world scenarios come through our factory. So we went all in with this idea of being able to run a fully functional business while developing the automation solutions that we need to run it. And it's been stressful and it's been hard. It's not for everyone. And, there's some days where I leave and I'm like, what did I get myself into? Because the challenge is so great. But there's other days that I realize that we are really doing the thing that I've always wanted to do, which is I wanted the ability to bring new people into this business and had the same benefit that I did in my background, which is, the trade took me out of poverty. It gave me an outlet for my weird brain to focus on something that I think without I would have been, semi-lost in my adult career. And I think that what we're doing is actually working, and it will allow for scaling of, manufacturing within the country, and hence a lot of job creation. Makes me very proud. So
awesome. Let's see. Tom asked, how does Hadrian hope to replicate their process to achieve sustainable growth? So you've talked a bit about growth, but you guys have some big growth coming up. What are the things you're putting in place to make sure that you don't grow too fast or too slow, and that you can duplicate this success?
Oh God, that's a great question. Honestly, that's what we're thinking through. Every day, but we're thinking through that really a lot now as we're approaching being full at our second factory. We're running out of space quickly. We're already going through the exercise to the chagrin of many people on my team, of shrinking desk space, which if you didn't know this, which you probably do, desk space for a CAM programmer is sacred. So having a 6-foot desk versus a 4-foot desk, right? 4-foot desk feels very, very limiting for how many screens can you put on that desk, right? So
right. How can I put my 40 tool tubes all over my desk if I've only got 4 feet?
You're exactly right. So yeah, so we're going through that now, which is we're really focused on like how do we know this thing is going to be repeatable? And how we do that is we have taken a staged approach in our purchasing. So we didn't purchase a line of Hermelays. We purchased 3, and then we purchased 4 more. And then as the system progresses, your rollout of those machine tools change. And then eventually you come to the end state rollout, right? Is when we put this machine down and we put our, secret sauce into those machines, are they producing good parts right when they hit the floor? And so far, so good. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Your friend and mine, Phil, asked, how do you identify potential leaders? Is there a consistent set of qualities that you look for? And what was the hardest realization you learned as you grew into leadership roles that required growth for those around you? So you were talking about adding managers and all of this. And as you break more things out, you're adding managers. What are the things that you look for in either current employees or potential hires that makes you want to put them in a managerial role? And then what were the things that you had to grow as you've grown through, now into a directorship?
I'm actively growing. So I think one of the key one, thanks Phil for this question, because I think he knows my philosophy on this, but my philosophy is the folks that know that they do not know everything are usually good leaders. So it's the person that has the self-awareness to understand that there are better people suited to solve that thing in front of you, even though you really want to solve it, and being able to remove yourself from or give your toys away, so to speak, is a really, really difficult leadership lesson for a lot of technical folks that are considering a leadership position, which I think generally what that means is a technical person will step into a leadership role and believe that how they got there is what they need to continue. And so they will open their CAM session or Hypermill in our case, or whatever they're good at to help their team during a bad scenario, right? They will rest on their laurels, so to speak. And I think one of the best leadership signals I have is the folks that figure out how to scale the benefit versus, that singular, I'm going to open up the CAM tool and help this queue, unbury this team that has a huge queue, or they're going to recognize that, they're going to step back and recognize that their resource pool is underutilized. There's 3 guys that are sitting around doing nothing, and they're going to reallocate that resource pool. So it's nuanced, but it comes down to self-awareness. It comes down to understanding that you don't know everything, and the point of building a team is to cover the bases and hire for qualities that you may not have, and continually evaluating the things that you need in your new role. Like the thing that I'm struggling with now, like present day, is just that, is I'm an R&D guy. We're stepping into higher rate production. I likely need to really invest some time in learning more about production manufacturing settings and really taking that seriously, and or hiring for that skill, and then learning from a quality that I feel that I need to continually get better at. So I think it comes down to really self-awareness of what you need and the ability to pull yourself out of the area that got you to the position that you're in, your new leadership role, and recognize that that's probably not what's going to get you to your next one.
Okay. His follow-on question was, how do you avoid bias in that activity? So you might have gotten to this role because of XYZ. Hiring someone who is, maybe not the antithesis of that, but, is different than you and has those skills that are different. How do you avoid bias in that? How do you judge people fairly and put them where they need to be?
That one's difficult. And I think for me, it's been through experience. I'm a biased person, just like we all are. And I do struggle with, and we all do, with putting your likeness in the position that you might be in now and you're moving away from, right? So you want somebody that's going to carry on the thing that you've been building. And what I actually look for is the people that have been the most respectful and being the dissenting party. So I want in my leadership team a team that, one, is willing to disagree and commit. So we're not going to always agree on the right solution the first time we talk about it. We're going to continually hammering that out until we get to a consensus. And if you are on the side that is still dissenting, you have the ability to turn that part of your brain off and commit 100% to the solution and move forward. That's usually what I'm looking for, is somebody that will check my assumptions So I'm looking for dissent. Like Phil and I generally don't always agree on a lot of things when it comes to like certain aspects of businesses. And Phil can probably enlighten some people about those things in the future, but I won't go into those now. But I will say the one thing I respect about Phil is Phil doesn't hold punches. He will tell you what his opinion is, and he always has logic behind the reasoning for that opinion. And as a leader, that's what you want to see in future leaders.
So I asked Al this, and I'll ask you this. How do you encourage that kind of disagreement in your subordinates?
By not firing them when they disagree. So, I mean, it comes down to this. You can say it as much as you'd like, right? Like that you won't get in trouble. I've been in so many situations where I was told that to bring my authentic self, and what that really meant was not to bring my authentic self, bring myself that they liked during the interview process, not the person that's going to tell, the director or the vice president that they're wrong about something. And the way I look at hiring is that's the reason why you'd hire. Otherwise, you can't automate all of this away. Eventually, a lot of these things can be automated. What you need is people that have the ability to question the solutions and make sure that we end at the right result, right, for our customer base. That requires people with different backgrounds. Usually that's environmental, like the best people's people are developed through their environment. So that means you want a diverse workforce. And I know a lot of people talk about that. I usually focus on diversity of thought. Our industry is dominated by such a, like, it's 99% white male, that diversity has been really difficult for a lot of us in the industry to find. But you start to focus on people that have different socioeconomic backgrounds and, all these different avenues to bring different types of thought into your business. And that in a nutshell is what I'm looking for, is people that can respectfully dissent and folks that can check my assumptions and, have different, background skill sets, like production manufacturing, for instance. Have them come in with our leadership team, which is currently mostly an R&D focused leadership team, and help us backfill, gaps in our thought. So,
are there any specific actions or discussions you have to encourage that? Because like you said, I think a lot of us come from shops that said, oh yeah, definitely disagree with me. And then you've immediately gotten beaten down when you've shared a dissenting opinion. So are there any specific things that you found ease people into that? I think that the struggle there is that you want to encourage that, but everybody's ideas aren't always perfect. So, you might tell someone, please disagree with me, but at the end of the day, they might have a bad idea too. That's a dissenting opinion. So it's really tough to balance that line of, please come to me with your opinions. That doesn't always mean I'm going to take them at face value.
Sure. I think that, yes. So I will caveat what I just said with, not every idea that I get is great. And not every idea can work with the current. It might not even be that it's a bad idea, that it just doesn't work with the current business, like unit economics that you have at your business. So you might be able to not do a thing, even though it is a good idea. I think transparency is how you handle that. So, just telling them flat out that this doesn't align with right now with our business, and here is why. And like making sure that they get the context that they need, and you don't just say things like, because I said so. And then you have to start from day one giving up certain aspects of what you may have done before in your latter job. So for instance, like I used to do a lot of the part processing at the company, and the initial plan for a part would come through me, and that no longer is the case. And when that person, I won't name names, but when that person stepped into the role that they're doing now, there was mistakes that were made, and they're still here and they're thriving in their role today because they were our culture. And what I've been stating within, our teams and our culture has rung true, and people have seen that there's been failures, but this person has not been, reprimanded. That definitely goes a long way when, somebody makes a mistake that might crash a machine, but you look at it as a learning opportunity. That person, we don't necessarily, we don't look at it as a negative. We celebrate it as learning opportunity. We move on, and then we try to never repeat it. And the more you do that, and the more that people have that anecdotal kind of, or that environment where they can see it tangentially to them, will open them up. And over time, they'll feel comfortable, coming to you with more and more provocative thought, so to speak. And then that's really when you can start humming, is when you get to the point where you have, 15 to 30 individuals that can come in and bring their real person to their job every day and not feel like they're going to leave and maybe not have a job the next morning if they had a rough meeting or something where they dissented against me or somebody else in the business. So I try to celebrate those things. And I really just think it comes down to this, just actually doing what you say you're going to do. So
yeah,
it's a
totally
trust exercise. So
I'll plug this again. He comes up every couple months on the podcast. If you haven't seen Nicholas Means talk on 3 Mile Island and blameless postmortems, I would very strongly, I'll send you a link when we're done here.
Thank you.
He has 4 or 5 talks, and he does them at developer conferences, and they all speak to me so well in terms of teaching me lessons, and they're fun to listen to. But that one is a fantastic one about kind of getting the bias out of problem solving and out of mistake making, and understanding that everyone comes from a very specific life, and that what is very obvious to you in retrospect might not have been that obvious in the moment. So I'll send you a link when we're done here, but
I would
highly recommend, if anybody's listening and hasn't gone and listened to that you should.
That's a good point. We actually don't do postmortems anymore. So I think last time you said it brilliantly, that we've all been in postmortems that were useless. And so we have not been doing them nearly as much as we used to. Our system is collecting data and then giving that information to us in real time now, which is nice. And that's how we've gotten away from having useless postmortems. But we do tend to talk about things that go bad still in kind of a group setting. And one of the things that the CAM team has always done is every week during our team meetings, we speak to one thing that went good professionally and one thing that went bad professionally every week. And each person on the team gets an opportunity for, 90 seconds to 2 minutes to kind of talk through those things. That is another way of creating an open environment where there is no blame. And generally what I see now that we have younger people and more junior folks coming into CAM within Hadrian is that is what unlocks their ability to become bold. So I think you hit it spot on. Can't wait to watch anything about postmortems that are blameless, because almost zero of them in industry have been. So
yeah, exactly. Well, that takes care of all the questions. You had brought up a couple of topics. I think we hit on most of them except for mental health and burnout. So actually, on the episode I recorded yesterday that will come out a week before yours does, I talked a little bit with Chris about feeling burnt out. We both were feeling it. It's for sure real. I think incredibly real in this industry. What do you have to say about that? Have you found any good ways to avoid that, especially in a team that's as high functioning as yours? I imagine that the stress across the board is kind of extremely high. So what have you guys dealt with?
We've dealt with a lot. I mean, we've dealt with loss and people's personal, the personal aspect of burnout within work, which is something bad in your personal life is happening, and it's very difficult. There's only a few people, my uncle being one of them, that I've seen ever do this really well, which is kind of separate their work from their personal life. What I have seen for me that has worked man, what I suggest the team do is stop thinking about work-life balance and start thinking about work-life integration. So like being your authentic self all day, every day allows you to come in and have a bad day. It allows you to have a team that can recognize that you have a personal, struggle because you're open with it. Something's happening in your family that's bothering you. And, you need, a couple hours this week in an afternoon to go and handle something important for your family. And, their business accommodating that, right? That will help with stress. That's also why we do a salaried position for everyone within CAM. So that allows them some of that freedom within reason to handle personal things that can cause like cascading or snowballing effects in their performance if they don't handle them right away. The other one is and I don't know how to answer this, and I'm kind of asking the community to help with everyone that's struggling with depression or stressors within manufacturing, burnout at the thing that they love, right? Like I've been in this industry for 20 years and I've went through varying stages of burnout. Always being able to catch myself before I get to some really negative in my life that would have taken me away, right, from the industry that I love. So remembering, that this is always, everything is a short-term thing, and having an eye on the long-term for me helps. But for other people, that causes anxiety, and actually that can cause stress. So not living in the moment, right? So that balance of having leadership that can recognize that is one part of it. And then the other part of that is the industry needs to start talking about this in a real way. Nobody's doing that. If you talk, most podcasts about machining are talking about the crash of the week or the automation of the technology, but nobody's talking about the individual behind the technology. And I think that it's due time that our industry starts to focus on the people within it. So,
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I know I've found one thing that helps me is kind of chasing if I know I'm feeling burnt out or I know I'm feeling down for that day, is kind of chasing the dopamine. Like Brad calls it being productively procrastinating. So
100%.
there's plenty of things around the shop. Like I would feel terrible, and I feel worse if I did nothing, if I came to work and literally did nothing. And there have been those days, and I feel terrible there. I feel terrible when I get home.
Mm-hmm.
But if I get to work and I'm like, man, I just don't want to work on that part. I don't want to program it. I know I'm going to be less productive if I do that versus like, oh, you know what? I'm going to clean up this area that bugs me really badly. And like, that's what's really giving me dopamine today. That's what's really making me happy. I'm going to get that done. And then we'll see where I sit, for the rest of the day. So that's always been a big one for me.
That's actually a great, oddly enough, that's another one that I do. So when I'm very stressed, I go to find something to clean in the factory. One of the things that I think Hadrian is very unique with this, which I think our director of operations, or I think he's the VP of operations now, has really done a great job at promoting, is when he is stressed about the business, he goes out and he has made it a point to learn how to do every role's job. And he will go out and he actually finds a lot of joy in going and setting up machinery. So you'll see him not very often because he's busy, but I do know when he is extra stressed and worried about the business, you will see him buy a machine tool right where the money's being made, right? So that's the way he looks at it, and that what brings him joy. What I do is I'll go and tidy up like the 3D printing area just because it's a shared space. And I think that would help, a user that's coming along. And that brings me joy, is being able to unblock somebody from a menial task that can have them get them focused on what they should be doing that day versus setting up or cleaning up build plates or something. So I'll go wash those down and stuff like that. I just think one of the things that, like, just to double click on that, is I think the industry needs to slow down and really have a focus on supporting people within the industry in a new way and creating a place where people can talk about this type of topic without being looked down upon, which I think my dad's manufacturing industry would have left this topic out of a room and likely would have shut the door on many employees locally that have issues with depression or issues with anxiety that may have been the best employee that they would have had that never was realized. And I think that that's what I'm saying is one of the reasons why we are struggling with bringing in new people into this industry, is that people are not thinking about this. And it's going to be a focus of mine going forward, is how do I be a vulnerable leader and let people know that we're all human, and supporting people in a way that is new in order to get the best out of them at work. I think this is going to be a big push, and it's actually going to be one of the soft skills, I think, that allows for our industry to continually grow, even though automation might be taking away some portions of people's job in the future. So,
well, and hopefully the automation gives us that space to do that. I mean, I think that's part of the point.
That's the point. That's the point is, why work 12 hours when you could do the same amount in 8, right? So hopefully people are taking the time to take care of their health. I think that's another one in the industry that people don't focus on, is their physical health. They just work themselves to death, right? And I will raise my hand to be the first one in a room, and most people that know me well know that I am definitely what is considered a workaholic. And that has done a lot of great things for my career, but it's also done a lot of things that I'm not necessarily proud of either. And those are the things that, now that I'm in like this new position, I've realized if we don't handle this, we do have a cap on how big we can grow and how much good we can do in this world. So it's time to focus on that, and it's going to take guys like you, Dylan, and guys like Phil and all the people out there in the community to really be okay with talking about it. And you know, I implore anyone that, is having a bad day or, needs somebody to talk to. Yeah. If, reach out to me if you know me, happy to talk, but we need to make sure that the avenues are open for people to have that respite or that person to talk to that they may not have today. So
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think all of my friends and probably most of my listeners know that, I'm a fairly open door as far as messaging or calling or whatever. I lean hard on my friends when I really need them. I'm very lucky to have a close-knit group of people in the industry that I can, I have no problem calling and bitching about my day, and I know that it's not going to be ignored. They're more than happy to hear my problems.
Yeah, I think Simon Sinek actually has a really interesting rule amongst his leadership team, where it's in his friend group. I think I read about this about 6 months ago, where it was basically there's a rule where if you are crying, you cannot cry alone. So there's no crying alone. So basically, you actually get in trouble if you don't call and reach out to someone to kind of have that experience with them, and then, make sure that you have somebody on the other side of the fence that's listening to, whatever is bothering you at the moment. I think that is very difficult to pull off a culture like that, but it's something that we should all strive towards. And thank you for doing what you're doing, Dylan. And I think this platforms like these, talking about these topics that are not natural to this industry is the first step kind of into changing the culture at large. So,
well, thank you. Well, in that vein, it brings me to the last 3 questions I ask every guest every week. I'll change them up a little bit because it's on topic. What are the things you're working on to be a better person, leader, employer, what have you? None of us are perfect. We're all working on stuff. What's yours?
So mine is communication. I think growing up with a speech impediment and a very much struggled with that growing up with stuttering and, being a very, very a scattered brain generally has caused some of my anxiety in the role that I am in now. So doing these podcasts and doing things like this that make me stretch myself and talk about things that are not necessarily comfortable, and having people willing to ask me questions that I might not want to field in a setting where I have to say it and it's going to be heard. That helps. So that's one way I'm working on myself. And some people know that I recently dealt with pretty bad health scare, and I'm still recovering from that. Being vulnerable about that, talking about it, my bad days during recovery, and doing that in a way that I don't, worry so much about how it's received, more that I'm doing it for myself, has been a thing that I have never prioritized, doing anything for myself, and I am refocusing on that. So that's one avenue, and the other avenue is I find a lot of joy in watching my daughter play basketball. So I'm helping with coaching and stuff like that, just to get all my hobbies have always been manufacturing related. So having new hobbies, getting back to doing art and things that people probably would not know about me, but just drawing every night for 15 minutes really has done a lot for me. And yeah, I guess that's where my focus has been.
I love that. That's great. I think that, man, that is like such a typical story in the industry of like, so many machinists I know are just obsessed with machining. Like it is their hobby, it is their vocation, it is their life. And it is important to have hobbies outside of that, even if it is just drawing for 15 minutes or something. Like it's so important.
I don't have a lot of time, but I've realized that I've used that as an excuse for so many years that I've let some of these things that bring me a lot of joy in my life just kind of go by the wayside. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And I think that's going back to burnout. I think burnout is caused, even though it's in good faith, you're trying to learn as much as you can, get as good as you can at this industry, which is kind of changing rapidly, right? So which a lot of the reason why you see people jumping into making their hobby 100% centric around their job is because of the rapid change within this industry. And that makes them feel better and makes, and it's the same thing that I did, right? But I will say that it comes back to you eventually, and you need to do the things that bring you joy in a different part of your brain. So we're dynamic people, and the thing that you might love that you just haven't picked up because of the time that you have, find 15 minutes every night. If I can do it, you can do it. It'll make you feel better. So
definitely. Next up, what did you research this week? It doesn't have to be manufacturing related, just what's been popping up in your browser.
Okay. I'll go two things. I have a Datron. I had bought this little M7 HP Datron, which is like a belt driven. I think it was the initial. I'm going to get railed on if I get this wrong, and I probably will, but I believe it was the original Cube machine, or maybe the Neo, not positive, but it's a granite table machine, little granite table bed, has like a bridge XYZ, and has a 60,000 RPM spindle that I bought for my garage, and I am currently setting that up. So I'm researching a lot about this machine, realizing that there's literally no documentation anywhere on it. And there's like maybe 4 posts in the history of Instagram with the hashtag that gets me to something that's about the machine tool. So there's not very much. So I am going to be making probably a WhatsApp group and throwing a bunch of questions out to a bunch of people I respect, because I'm going to need some support when I'm setting up this weird machine. And then me and my daughter are going to do art projects on it, which is going to be really fun. But that's one. And then the other one is a Rivian. So I just recently leased a R1S Rivian for my wife for her graduation gift, and put the down payment on for her. And I did a lot of research on it because I was really worried about the car. They don't have a lot of following yet. There's just a lot of like unknowns still with the new car industry, or new car companies. And what I realized is that, they're an Amazon backed entity, so they're going to be around for a while. And that made me feel okay about making the purchase, I guess. But we've had it for 1 week. It's one of the coolest cars ever. I can't wait to go camping in it. Basically, if you like camping, it's the ultimate rig. So
It's super cool. Yeah. Rivian makes some really, really cool looking EVs.
Yeah. Yeah. The hippo, as my daughter calls it. So
Awesome. Last up, what is a win from this week that you'd like to share?
wow. What does it win? I think in my role, I think I focus way too much on the things that are not wins. And that's another part of what we've been talking about in the latter part of this podcast, but that I probably should continually get better at. But one of the wins that I think we've had, I think other people might not believe is a win, but a win for me was watching our new leaders within Cam and Hadrian this week kind of really step into their own. It's been a relatively short time, 3 or 4 weeks into role, and there's been a lot of moving parts, right? Whenever you have a new team breakout and then a roll up to a larger entity forming, there's always a lot of mess that happens. And then just watching them kind of come into their own and doing things that, were surprising, that I didn't expect, nor did I prompt, really gives me a lot of hope for the future. And, it was a big win for Cam and Hadrian this last week. So
awesome. I love it. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you coming back on. Where can people, I know you're always hiring, where can people find more about Hadrian or apply or anything like that?
Well, you can go online onto the website. There's careers page, click on it. LinkedIn, we always post all our jobs there. Directly DM me on any of the socials or LinkedIn. Happy, even if we don't have a role, if you're interested, I will get you in touch with someone, even if it's not cam related. But yeah, just we're on all the major platforms, and we're hiring like gangbusters. We need to hire 15 people within cam alone this year. So, and we're halfway to the halfway point already, and we need to get going. So if you are interested in working for a group that I regard as one of the best in industry, come on down.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. It has been great to catch up and get to kind of pick your brain more about everything that's been going on.
Yeah, happy to do it anytime, Dylan, man. These talks are always therapeutic for me. So appreciate it.
Awesome. And thanks to all the Patreon members who make this show possible. Let me send people like Jamie a headset and microphone so you guys get good audio. Thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week.